Hello and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Very good evening.
It's Sunday the 20th of July 2014 and we're in the studio and it is roasting.
It is very, very warm this evening.
Very warm, but then again, we are in the summer, so what do we expect? I'm not going to complain because we have the cold long enough when the winter's here.
Don't complain because what did we have 2 days ago? Torrential rain.
Oh, true, yeah. No, I totally agree. Okay, our guest on tonight on the show is JAH, Maud'Dib, or also known as John Anthony Hill. And we're going to be talking to JAH about the Ark of the Covenant, which he believes is buried in the Hill of Tara. And we're also going to be talking about Ukraine and what's going on over there in the Middle East. Obviously, with everything that's going on, there seems to be a build-up. So many things going on at the moment in the world. Unbelievable. And we're going to be talking about a number of issues as well. But before we do that, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Okay, Mary, the communication channels this evening, please.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Thank you, Mary. 046 927 1212 is the number to contact us in the warm, hot, humid studio this evening. Also, if you're going to ring in from outside the Republic of Ireland, it's going to be 00353 469 271212. We also have the chat room as well, which is open for business. The drinks are half price this evening at the bar, so get in there. You can post questions for a guest this evening and also for ourselves. Say hi to everyone who's in there. And I also want to mention, because I forget to mention all the time, we also have a Facebook page. So just, if you're on Facebook, log into Facebook and just search for OYM and you will find us. Alan.
Excellent. Okay, and I'd just like to say, Steve, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. What'd you get me?
We are now 4 years on live on the radio show. 4 years of OYM. We've been doing OYM every Sunday, near enough every Sunday, for 4 years. So, we've no music lined up and no congratulations, but there you go. 4 years on the radio, doing what we do. And let's hope
it's a milestone.
It is a milestone. Let's hope if the world survives that we'll probably be carrying on doing it for another 4 years. We'll just see how we go anyway.
I'll settle for another one. Let's get the 5 first before we start looking to go to 8.
Okay, we do probably aim for another one anyway. Okay, just a couple of things that we're going to touch base on. Basically, Steve's going to talk to you about Gmail and emails.
Yeah, allegedly I am. Yeah, we know that Gmail for some reason seems to be putting OYM emails straight into the spam folder. I can't imagine why. So if you're registered on the site and have not received any emails, you will need to check your spam folder and put in a filter to allow OYM email addresses. And it's funny because, as I just mentioned to Alan before the show, my dad is down with us here for the weekend, and he got an email, and he showed me the email on his phone. He said, did you just send me that? And I'm looking at it going, no, it's the one Alan sends out periodically, which is the OYM web links. And it was only when he showed it to me, I said, no, I didn't, no, that's Alan would have sent that out. And that's actually, now that I remember, I'm going to say it to you. My email address has obviously changed. I'm not getting those emails anymore, and they're not in my spam folder because I'm not on Gmail.
It's going to the old one. I have to change it.
Is it? Okay. I'll have to re-register, will I?
No, you're okay. I'll change it for you. I know you.
Grand. Also, the OYM YouTube channel. We have allowed comments on the channel, as we know people will have opinions on people we interview. However, if your comments are not constructive and obscenities are being used, we will remove you and probably ban you. So please keep your comments on the YouTube channel clean. I mean, if you have something to say, by all means say it. And, if you can't say it without obscenities, well then, prepare to be banned.
Well, try and make it constructive.
Exactly.
Rather than just moaning. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, now, the big thing, obviously, during the week. Now, last week we talked about the Christine Lagarde video. The fact she came out and she talked about numerology in the number 7, which is very, very strange. And we all agreed to it that it was very strange for her to do that. Now, what happened during the week? Very, very strange. Okay, we had the actual crash of the MH17. Now, here's the thing. It says the information coming back from that is that the Malaysian Airlines flight flight MH17 first flew on the 17th of July 1997 until the 17th of July 2014, when it was downed 17 years later. Obviously, the flight number was MH17 and the plane was a 777. Now, that's uncanny. Also, there was up to 100 passengers on board were top experts in HIV/AIDS. And apparently, so they were saying in the press, that they had near enough a vaccine for that. Now, obviously, that would be of interest to the pharmaceutical companies, maybe not to have that vaccine out there. And then, obviously, you have people like Dick Cheney and Hillary Clinton coming out, and before they even have any information, they're blaming it on Russia straight away. Now, I'm not saying...
Does that sound familiar? 9/11?
9/11, rings a bell, false flag. Look, false flag with bells on it. Now, if anybody like Dick Cheney or Hillary Clinton, any of them cronies over there, are talking about and blaming Russia, and they're coming out and talking about it, you can guarantee that was a false flag. And there's even people saying that some of the bodies were actually days old. They weren't, it didn't just happen, days old. And some people said they didn't even see an aircraft. So, there you go. Now, this aircraft here, again, I'm just going to say what's out there. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just going to say what people are saying. That the aircraft that went missing, the MH370, is the same plane, the 777, that was the same plane as the one that crashed over Ukraine. Now, they changed the flight path. All of the aircrafts are flying away from the Ukraine, and they dropped it from 35,000 feet to 33,000 feet. Now, everybody's pointing the finger, or seems to be pointing the finger at the Russian and Putin on the Russian side, and they don't even have the evidence. So, I mean, it's just full of false flag. Really, really is. So keep your ear to the ground and watch out what they're saying. But there you go. The whole kind of 7 thing, was this part of it, or was this part of the whole banking system shutdown? Well, so far we had a quick chat with JAH before we went live, and up to early today, the banking system in America is still up and running. Now, this is the 20th of July, and we said watch out for this date, but we haven't heard anything. And the other thing that we've heard is that Germany have had enough of the US and UK attitudes and are moving more easterly to China and Russia. So there seems to be a big change. I mean, we know about the BRICS countries getting together, and that's 40% of the world population. And now if Germany are kind of fed up with the NSA phone tapping and everything else that's been going on, and they're going to kind of start moving to the east, and other countries might follow, because of what America is doing, what Obama is doing. It's just amazing that they have the audacity. This kind of attitude of exceptionalism by America. They keep saying, oh, we're exceptional, we're exceptional. No, you're not. I can guarantee you're not. You're like everybody else, if not a little bit worse. And I'm sorry if we have American listeners listen to us, but don't believe that rhetoric coming out of Obama saying you're exceptional. You're not. I've been to the States a good few times. I've travelled all around America. I've done a lot of travelling, as Steve has done some travelling as well. And I can tell you now, you're not exceptional. You're very positive people, but you're not exceptional. Okay? So don't be believing that stuff that Obama is coming out with. Right, okay. And the other thing is Steve's going to tell us about what's happening in Gaza as well, because we have to talk about that. And it's just unbelievable what's going on over there.
It is. As I mentioned last week, I've seen some footage on the internet of, which is alleged to be photographs from the atrocities that's happening over there, and it's just dead bodies and people holding bodies with heads blown off or heads partially blown off. Very graphic, and I'm not the better of it. I don't have I can watch it on movies all day long and it won't affect me in any way. And I have to say, I'm not desensitized to it, because I can see these pictures on the net which pertain to be are perceived to be real. And it sickens me to the pit of my stomach. But as if that wasn't bad enough, Alan was just telling me this piece of information earlier on, something about Press TV. It's alleged again that Israel are dropping cancer-inducing bombs on Gaza, and seemingly a Norwegian doctor in Gaza has strongly criticised Israel for using these cancer-inducing bombs against Palestinian civilians. I wouldn't even know why they would do something like that. but we were just having a chat with JAH before we come on, and he was just giving us some good information. He said, well, the people that don't die immediately from the bombs, if this is true, and if they do end up with cancer, well then they're going to be obviously they're going to be they're going to be in the health service. Then they're going to have to get treated. So therefore, even though they're dying slowly, people are still going to make money on them, and it's just going to be a slow, painful death. And I haven't heard of this. To be totally honest with you, I don't know if there's any credence to it at all. There may not be. But Jesus, imagine if there was. What next? Cancer bombs, HIV bombs, and where will it stop?
It's just there's so much going on. I mean, we could have a show, just myself and Steve, talking about the things that are going on at the moment. There's just so much going on, and it's like an accumulation of things, all kind of adding up to something big. We don't know. We're just kind of watching everything at the moment. But sorry, Steve, go ahead.
No, that was it.
Okay, no problem, but it's terrible. It's great to see so many people around the world, so many protests, out there in all different cities regarding the support of the Palestine people, It's great to see, and they have our full support as well. What Netanyahu is doing and what they're doing over there. I mean, it's disgusting to see these Israeli people sitting on a hill watching the bombs landing in Palestine and cheering every time a bomb landed. I mean, these people are just sick. They really are just sick people. They need, the karma will come around. Let's leave it at that. How's your week, Steve?
I'd like to say good. I won't say good. It wasn't bad either. It was productive. First thing I want to mention, I've got two things, and that's all. Two things I want to mention. Water meters. I mentioned last week that they were going to be starting the installations in my area on Tuesday of this week. And they did. So I took Tuesday off as a holiday from work. So I was there. I couldn't sleep with the excitement and the anticipation on the Monday night. So I was awake before the alarm went off on Tuesday morning. So I was up about 6 o'clock. Went down, and I had my sign was already out. The sign saying don't install the water meter here, blah, blah, blah. It's a big spiel on it. But that was already out and had been for like a week or so beforehand. So I'd had a great idea the night before. My front wall needs some painting. So I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring out all my tools, my scraper and my little wire brush and dust sheets and what have you. So I brought them all out and left them just outside the wall, not covering where the water meter was going to be, but very, very close to it. So guys came along, bang on 8 o'clock. So as they were pulling up outside the house, and I walked out the door. There was three of them. One chap said to me, and I'll try and do the accent as best I can. Are you going to be protesting? And I said, absolutely. And that was all. He didn't say any more to me. There was two other chaps with him. One, I'd say, probably a man in his 50s. He just looked at me. He didn't utter a word. He just looked at me and he made a face. He wasn't happy. So I actually figured out they must be on commission. If one person protests and they don't get to put the meter in, I'm guessing they don't get commission. I could be wrong. So that was it. I said, look, listen, lads, feel free to move on to the next house. So a couple of seconds later, they got back into the van, drove down, put the barriers outside the next house and continued on down the road. I went then about my business start with the wire brush, scraping the paint off the wall. Another white car with Irish water emblazoned on it drove up and down the road several times, eventually pulling up outside my house. A guy gets out and says to me, "Is this your house?" And I looked at him and I said, "It might be." "Well, is that your sign?" "It might be." "Who wants to know?" He said, "Irish water." And I said, "Sorry, never heard of you." And that was it. I just turned away and went back about my business. There was cars and vans up and down the road all day. There was supervisors, there was guys going up, and they were doing what they were doing. Now, I wasn't actually blocking where they were going to be. Just remember that. Keep that in your mind, because that's important. I wasn't blocking them, because I read later that there was some article in one of the rags that was supposed to be the national media press. They were saying anyone blocking Irish water may face a fine of €5,000.
That was in the Irish Independent, which is Dennis O'Brien's paper.
Ah, well, Dennis. Good man, Dennis. Yeah, so I wasn't actually blocking them, but where I was working, scraping the paint off my wall, it was very well scraped, I must admit. It was the best part, it was the only part of the wall where I got all the paint off.
Well, fair play, you've done the job, and no meat has gone in, so...
I done that. They went up the road, and they done one side, so they can't block both footpaths at the same time, so the other footpath on the other side was open. Then they knocked off about 5 o'clock, so I went in, around about the same time. Sunburned to a crisp, I might add. I've sunburned where I didn't know I had, places, that I didn't know I had. But anyway, so that was fine. I was a bit suspicious then because they were going to come back the next day to do the other side of the road. So I said, you know what, I'll take the Wednesday off as well. So I did. They came back Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. They came back 8 a.m, but one of the supervisors in the vans was there from about 7:15 because I looked out the window and I seen him. He was sitting right across the road from my house. So again, I was up, crack of dawn, had all me bits and bobs left out because I was painting the wall then on the Wednesday. So that was fine. They done the other side, and that was it. They didn't. No one else came near me or said anything. Although a few of the lads that were not the supervisor now, but the few of the lads that were working, like the guy who was operating the digger and another guy who was operating the consaw, they actually did come up at separate times and read the sign. Because I wasn't standing outside there marching up and down or jumping up and down or roaring and shouting or standing on their equipment or anything like that. I didn't have to do that. The sign was there, and I just I told them where what I was about. And
as I said to you, I think what they were probably told with all the protesting and issues that they had is that, look, just if somebody protests, leave them alone. We'll get them in court. It'll probably be something like that. That's probably what they're being told.
Probably, yeah.
So right,
yeah. So that's the first thing. So that was okay. That went well. Second thing I want to mention is Pete. If you're listening, you're gonna have to send us in your email address because I did reply to you during the week and it bounced back. I tried several variations of your email and it just kept bouncing back. That's Pete sent us in an email during the week, and we often get emails. Some are constructive, some are not constructive, but the one from Pete. Well, let's just say there was a lot of kind of aspersions in it. So Alan left it to me because my name was mentioned a couple of times in it. I did reply to Pete. I'm not going to go too much into it, but his email wasn't very constructive, from my opinion. And I can take criticism, but if it's constructive, I won't take criticism if it's negative, because there's just no point. But if Pete, if you are listening or if you catch this on the podcast, can you please email us again, because I do have a reply and I do want to send it to you, because I feel it's important that you send something over to us, and I think we should have a right to reply. So if you are listening, please do send a genuine email address so we can get back to you. There. That's it. How's your week? Okay, right. Just a couple of things again. Again, talking about Irish Water. Irish Water are going to be sending out forms in the post in September, apparently. Now, I'm just wondering if they send the form out, because you probably heard that they're looking to try and get the PPS numbers of us and our kids. And I'm just wondering if they're going to address them forms as the occupier, or will they have our details on it? And if they have our details, then the question would be, where did they get them details from? And, because it's all data protection and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, being a private company, who gives them the permission if they send out the forms and it's addressed to individuals in the house? If it's the occupier, well then, they'll obviously go back in the post anyway. But it's very, very cheeky for them to be doing that. But we'll see what happens in September. The other thing is, I don't know whether you saw it, but we did send it out to our registered users that the John Kerry, who's the Secretary for State in America, and the French Foreign Minister came out at a press conference, and they said there's 500 days to climate chaos, which works out to be September 2015, which is the last of the blood red moons. And if you haven't seen it, just go to YouTube and type 500 days of climate chaos. Now, we sent this video over to Piers Corbyn from Weather Action to say, well, what would they be talking about, Piers, just to see what he says about it. So we'll see if we get any feedback. But it's just curious that the French Foreign Minister and John Kerry talk about it very blasé, very kind of matter of fact.
which is a bit curious as to why they're saying it. And what do they mean by, climate chaos? What do they know that they're not telling us? Are they forewarning us, but in a nice way? I don't know. So, and the other thing is, as you know, again, back in the water meters, that my estate is actually not being taken over by the council at the moment, and hasn't been for a good few years, and it's not managed. And all of a sudden, the other day, I see this guy walking up and down with measuring one of these kind of things where you measure the road. So, me being me, went out and said, excuse me, can I ask you what you're doing? And he said, I'm measuring for the tarmac. And I said, oh, you're telling me that we're going to have our tarmac done and the estate finished? And he said, well, I can't answer that. He says, I'm just here to measure for tarmac. So it's just funny. I'm just curious that after all these years, we're in this unfinished estate that nothing gets done, and all of a sudden Irish Water come on the scene, and somebody has the power to force maybe the estate to be done, and there's about 11 things that has to be done.
You know why that's happened, don't you?
They want the money.
Yeah, but Irish Water weren't aware this wasn't handed over to the council until you got onto them.
Yeah.
So obviously, whatever information you gave to them, it obviously rang true, and they realised, oh, we've been nobbled now. So they're obviously wheels are put in motion now to get this stay finished.
Yeah, and that's, well, I don't have a meter, and I told them I don't want one, so it's simple as that. So there you go. So that's it. That's the information.
Sorry,
yes, Steve.
Speaking of meters, did you see the article in the newspaper from anyone who is a long time listener of the show, or any show for that matter, may remember Tony Rochford. Tony Rochford went on a hunger strike there was it last year or the year before? I think it was only last year. He went on hunger strike in relation to the property tax. Well, Tony, he came off the hunger strike, and thank God he did, and he's doing well. He's down there in Trim, County Meath, and Tony, seemingly, he's actually after bringing Irish Water to court recently during the week in relation to these boxes. The boundary boxes, they're substandard, and they're not as good as, I don't know, there's two grades of them. There's grade 1 and grade 2, or grade A and grade B, whatever it is, I don't know.
There's 3 grades.
Three grades.
A, B and C, yeah.
There would have to be 3. Why could it not just be 2 and have it simple? Okay, there's a great box, a good box, and a crap box, and seemingly the Irish Water are putting in the crappy boxes.
Grade C, yeah.
Yeah, C for crappy. So Tony brought them to court, and he won his case.
Yeah.
So he said if they're going to put a boundary box outside his home, he wants it to be of the higher grade. And he won his case, so Irish Water that's exactly what they have to put in. Now, I think he's going to protest about the meter going in, but the boundary box, because I don't know whether they started work already, but he wants the proper one in, and that's what he's got. And seemingly, after he won his case, Irish Water then tried to gag him, they tried to shut him up, but he got his story out there. It was actually in printed media. Now, from what Tony said, they tried to put a slant on it to kind of make it, maybe water it down a little bit. But he won his case fair and square, and fair play to him. And anyone who wants to check that out, just go onto the internet and just Google Tony Rochford, Irish Water.
Good. I stand corrected there. The actual wording for that is 500 days to avoid climate chaos. I don't know how they're going to avoid it, but let's see what happens. 500 days to avoid climate chaos.
Well, hang on. They're the ones those people spreading the chemtrails. They're the ones who are wrecking the climate.
Look, there's so much going on at the moment. Well, let's get JAH in and see what he has to say. Good evening, JAH. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good evening. How are you two today?
Not too bad. Thanks a lot for coming back on. This is kind of a part 2 of the interview that we did. The first one, so much information to talk about. So we said we'll do a part 2 or maybe a part 3. I don't know. Depends how we go on tonight. But let's kind of pick up on one of the subjects that we said we'd talk about. And there's questions already coming in for you. But let's start off with the Ark of the Covenant, and then we'll talk about the Middle East. Now, we know that Richard D. Hall has richplanet.net, and he had two guys there that did a lot of research regarding the Ark of the Covenant, and they believe that it's buried, I believe, somewhere in Wales, as far as I know, and all the research they've done. And obviously I know I've sent you over the link, and you've probably seen the link before anyway, and your research says that it's buried in the Hill of Tara. Do you want to give us a reason why you feel that you're right and they're wrong, and why that's the case?
Yeah, okay. The Ark of the Covenant originally, it was constructed at Sinai by Moses' brother Aaron, who was the first high priest of Israel. And it was constructed, it was lined and, on the inside with pure gold, and it was covered on the outside with pure gold. And it was made to contain the books that were given to Moses, which were the 5 books of Moses are the first 5 books in the Old Testament, first 5 books of the Bible, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And it's collectively known as the Torah, the law, God's law. And the covenant was made between God and the 12 tribes of Israel, which includes the Irish people, who are the tribe of Dan, which is one of the 12 tribes of Israel, the Tuatha De Danann. And the ark was constructed to keep the books, to keep the law in, and the covenant that was made. And anyway, it was carried with the Israelites, and it was kept within the tabernacle when they were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. But eventually it was placed inside the temple, which was built by Solomon on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. And Mount Moriah was the place where Abraham had taken Isaac centuries before and offered to sacrifice him. And then God said, no, I was just testing you. And there was a ram with its horns caught in a thicket in a bush. And so he sacrificed that instead. And that spot on earth, because he proved to God that, well, the ruler of the universe, if we want to go back to that terminology, he proved that he loved the ruler of the universe more than even the miracle child that he'd waited 100 years to have, and then was miraculously given when his wife was 90. So she was past the age of childbearing, but the ruler of the universe brought back her fertility. She had a son, and then Abraham had about 10 years to get to know him and play with him and love him. And then God asked him to sacrifice him, and then tested him to see whether he loved God, the ruler of the universe, more than everything and anything on earth, including this miracle child that he'd been given. So, because he passed the test, that one spot on Mount Moriah was referred to as being the holiest place on earth, the Holy of Holies. And so, centuries later, when Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem, he built it on Mount Moriah, and there was the outer sanctuary and the inner sanctum of the temple. The inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies, was built over the exact spot that Abraham had built the altar to sacrifice his son Isaac. And it was there that the Ark of the Covenant was placed over that exact spot, inside the Holy of Holies, inside the temple that was built by Solomon. And everybody knew that it was there. But they went away from keeping God's law, just as we've done today. Only today we've done it in spades. We've got all this European law. We've got the Constitution. We've got statutes. We've got all this legislation. We've absolutely gone away from God's law completely. And so what happened was that at the time in 588 BC, King Zedekiah of Jerusalem was on the throne in Jerusalem, and the Bible prophet Jeremiah, that's the book of Jeremiah in the Bible, in the Old Testament, was sent to Zedekiah to tell him that he had to return to the covenant and keeping God's law and not making up his own laws that he'd done in order to be able to rip everybody else off and make himself rich and make everybody else poor. That probably sounds familiar to everybody.
I was just about to say that. Let's hear that again. He created laws to rip everybody off. That's funny. Right. That sounds like governments to me.
Yeah, doesn't it just? Yeah, and they're doing it all the time. And all the politicians, they're all passing all this legislation to make themselves rich, them and their bankster friends. and make everybody else poor and take away their homes. You know, people are losing their homes and with their mortgages, and they're losing their jobs and all of that because the powerful people have got the politicians to make up all this false legislation to empower them to be able to steal, because that's really what it is. It's fraud, to be able to steal from the people and for them to end up with everything and the rest of the people end up with nothing. As slaves, basically. Which
has escalated now at the moment because there's so much corruption, blatant corruption in our face all over the world, not just in Ireland but globally. These people are getting let off. I mean, they're robbing the public left, right and centre, and they're getting away with blue murder. But if you go into a shop and rob, a packet of cigarettes, you got locked up for 5 years.
Yeah, or a loaf of bread to feed your children.
Yeah.
And yet these guys are stealing billions and they're getting away with it. They're thumbing their noses at everybody saying, we got away, we can do what we like. We're above the law because we own the politicians and we own the judges.
Mm. No, okay.
And of course, the guards as well, unfortunately. Even though the guards are suffering because they're having pay cuts, and being reduced in numbers, being made redundant. They've had, I don't know how much you might know, they've had their wages reduced, I think, about 3 times, haven't they, over the last couple of years or so?
It's getting ridiculous. Even the public
sectors. We need the guards to wake up and come on our side and help us to get rid of all this corruption, to help us really to enforce God's law instead of all this fraudulent legislation.
Well, that's one of the things we will get to. So I know without kind of spending, I know you could talk probably an hour alone about the tribes of Israel and everything else, but let's cut to the chase.
I just want to emphasise the point that the Irish people have had their identity, their true identity, purposefully hidden from them.
Yeah.
Because they are the Tuatha De Danann, they're the tribe of Dan, and if you look in the Old Testament, you'll see that Dan was one of the 12 sons of Jacob, Israel, and he fathered the tribe of Dan. So he's your ancestor.
Okay.
So you are Israelites. And the law and the covenant that's in the Ark of the Covenant were given to you to prevent all of this that's happening from happening.
Is that why the Irish are such a significant people in the whole scheme of the New World Order? Because we've heard this time again. If you look at like Michael Tessarian's work as well, they all seem to be pointing at the Irish people as very important in this whole kind of scheme of things. Yeah, well, obviously, with the law in it. But anyway, to go back to, I'll keep it as brief as I can. All right? But anyway, Jeremiah was sent to King Zedekiah to say to him, you have to go back to God's law and you have to redistribute all the wealth that you've stolen from the people to impoverish them under making up your own laws, your own legislation as we know it today, statute law and all of that. Okay, and he said otherwise he's going to send Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon and they're going to lay siege to Jerusalem and they're going to take Jerusalem and you're all going to end up as slaves. Well, they didn't like the message, so you know what happens when they don't like the message. Oh, of course, yeah.
I thought you were going to say shoot the messenger, but anyway.
That's what normally happens, yeah.
They put him in prison. They didn't like the message, but that only made what he told them even more certain that it was going to happen. So anyway, Nebuchadnezzar came and he besieged Jerusalem. The people were starving. They got so hungry that some of them ate their children. And anyway, eventually the city fell to him. They destroyed Solomon's temple. And they killed Zedekiah's sons in front of him. And then they blinded him. So the last thing he ever saw was his sons being killed. And he was taken to Babylon along with the rest of the people. And he put in prison and he died there in prison. But Jeremiah the prophet took from the temple before it was destroyed, he took the Ark of the Covenant and the real Leophil, the coronation stone, Jacob's pillar stone, which is the throne of David. And he went down to Tanis in Egypt and to the Pharaoh there. And the Pharaoh had been an ally of King Zedekiah against Nebuchadnezzar. So he gave them sanctuary. He knew who they were, and he gave them a palace at a place that today is called Tel Defni. And it's the palace was called Qasir bint el Yehudi, which means the palace of the daughter of Judah. Well, if you continue reading the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah says in the book that he was warned by the ruler of the universe that they had to leave Egypt because Nebuchadnezzar had now subdued all of Israel and Judea, and he was now coming after the Pharaoh because the Pharaoh had been allied with Zedekiah against him. So they left, and they got a boat, and they sailed along the Mediterranean. Long story short, they stopped in Gibraltar, changed ships. They were there 5 months waiting for the weather and the winds to change because they didn't have engines in those days. And then they came up, they were in a storm for 7 days. The oars were broken and the rudder was broken, and they were blown into Cornwall, into Mara Zion Bay. And the reason it's called Mara Zion, which is Hebrew, and that's a very strange thing to have in Cornwall, is because when they arrived at Mara Zion, the ruler of Cornwall, who was also an Israelite, from a different tribe from the Irish, but nonetheless one of the 12 tribes, and he wept bitterly over the fall of Jerusalem and the fall of Solomon's temple. And Mara Zion, Zion is Jerusalem, and Mara means bitter, because he wept bitterly over the fall of the temple and the fall of Jerusalem. But anyway, long story short, he arranged for Jeremiah and Zedekiah's daughter Teotefi to come to Ireland, to Tara. And they brought with them the Ark of the Covenant and Jacob's Pillar, which is the real stone of destiny. And the stone of destiny was placed on the inauguration mound and forad. And there, Teotefi, who was the daughter of King Zedekiah, who had become then the Queen of Israel, married Eochaid, who was the High King of Tara, High King of Ireland. And he was from the line of Judah Zara of the Red Hand, and she was from the line of Judah Pharez, from which the line of David came. And so when they got married, they sealed the breach between the two halves of the tribe of Judah. And what they did was they built they built a university at Tara, and it was called the School of the Olam. And that's where they taught the Torah, God's law, for over 1,000 years. All of her descendants were crowned on the real coronation stone, Jacob's Pillar, on the forad, on the inauguration mound at Tara, for 1,000 years. And they taught the Torah. And all of the families in Ireland and from around Europe, the rich people from around Europe, would send their firstborn to Tara, to the school, to learn the law, God's law. And before they came, there were lots of little warlords around Ireland, and they were all busy fighting each other for supremacy and for, for stealing cattle and all the rest of it. And so the people were getting killed, or they were getting maimed, fighting for all these warlords, and they were all poor and in a terrible state. So when they set up God's law, that prevented that from happening anymore, because under it there are no filthy rich people and there are no desperately poor people. Everybody has enough, which was demonstrated by Jesus, with the feeding of the 5,000. That if you share, there's enough for everybody. But the only problem is that you get people who are stronger than other people, or who think they're cleverer than other people, and they want to rule over them, and they make up their own rules to steal from people, just like we've seen throughout history. Well, under God's law, they're not entitled to do that. In God's law, in Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 2, it says, "You will not add to the words that I command you, and neither will you diminish anything from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God." Okay? Now, Moses was given the covenant. It's 5 books. It contains the law the statutes, the judgments, economic policy under which there's no filthy rich and there's no desperately poor, the agricultural policy that doesn't need chemicals and fertilizers and pesticides and all of that, but is healthy, doesn't poison the body or the land, and a healthy diet, which is told people what they should eat that's healthy for them and what they shouldn't eat because it will make their bodies sick. In that law, in Deuteronomy 4:2, it tells people that they cannot add to the law. They cannot legislate. It prohibits mankind from legislating. And it is repeated again in the same book of Deuteronomy, chapter 12, verse 32. It's the same thing. It says, you will not add or diminish from what I've told you. And it prohibits men from making up their own rules like Zedekiah had done and like they do in the Dáil and like they do in the Parliament in England and they do it in the Senate and the Congress in America and they do it everywhere all over the world. It's all against the law. If it's not in the 5 books of Moses, in the Bible, it's not law. It's fraudulent legislation that they make up in order to rip everybody off.
And that's something that we'll kind of touch on if we have time as to what you want to do about taking the head off the snake. Okay, so let's get to...
So anyway, for safekeeping, they made a chamber, a souterrain, in the hill of Tara, and they buried the ark there. And later on, when she died, they buried Tefi along with it, and then sealed it up. And it's been sealed up ever since. Nobody's been in there since like the 5th, 6th century BC. Nobody's been in there. It's still there. But what needs to happen is that the people need to realize that they have to go back to God's law, because it's the only way to sort out this mess in the world, and for them to stop losing their homes, and for Ireland to be prosperous again. They have to go back to God's law. They have to get rid of all the false legislation that's being used against them. Okay? And once the people decide that they see the sense of going back to God's law because it's fair for everybody, and they realize, the Irish people realize that they are Israelites from the tribe of Dan, they were at Sinai with Moses, they promised the ruler of the universe that they would keep his law forever, teaching it to their children in perpetuity. They have to, so that it would stop them from becoming oppressed, from becoming slaves, which is basically what they are now. They're debt slaves.
Okay. Well, let's talk about things.
They need to see that it needs to be, they need to return to the law, get rid of all of the political parties and all of the banksters and everything that's wrong. Yeah. And reinstate the law, at which point then the ark can be recovered from the hill of Tara and people can see it.
Right, so can we not go down there, or can we not request archaeologists to go down there and do the dig?
Yeah, if there's enough support for it. That's the thing. That I applied to Sheila de Valera when I came in here in 1998. I applied to Sheila de Valera for a permit to dig just a small area of flat grass, 2 meters by 2 meters, to gain access to it. And she refused to give me access to it because they don't want the people to understand the law. They don't want the Irish people to know that they're really Israelites from the tribe of Dan, because they want you to serve them and their legislation. They absolutely are terrified that the people will wake up and want to go back to the law and throw out all of their false legislation, redistribute the wealth and the land, and set themselves free. Well, terrified of it.
If you're saying 2 meters by 2 meters, I mean, if it's good enough for Jimmy and John with a plank of wood in the middle of the night doing crop circles, surely Paddy and John can pop out with 2 shovels and dig up. I mean, how deep is it buried?
That's an unknown at the moment, but it's not just a case of digging the 2 meters by 2 meters. For instance, people have said to me, well, why don't you go in the night, just like you're saying, and dig? It's not that simple, because if they see where I would be digging, right, they would then know where the entrance was. At the moment, they've no clue. They don't know where the entrance is. The only person that knows where it is me. Yeah. Because I've been shown and I was sent here to recover it. Right. All right, and I was shown where the entrance is. If they were to see where I was digging, then they would stop me, and then they would know how to get in. And I'm not prepared for that to happen. The only person that can go in there is me.
But surely, with the powers that they have, they could actually just go and dig the whole hill up and just keep looking. And it has to be there somewhere.
Yeah, no, but they won't find it.
They won't
find it. And in any case, they won't do that because it's a protected national heritage site.
Yeah, but they're talking about the New World Order, JAH.
Well,
They don't give a monkeys.
Yeah, well, and Bush was there when he came. He went to the Hill of Tara.
Yeah, it's curious, all right. Okay, well, listen, we have a few questions in, and we have to move to the next subject. But basically, what you're saying is that the Ark of the Covenant is buried in the Hill of Tara somewhere, and what we need to do is we need people power to get together, to go down and do the dig and to find it and to prove that it's there. I mean, put it this way: what happens? Just, being devil's advocate, I know you don't probably like that. I know you don't like that word, but, for want of another word, what happens if you go down there and you were given permission, you do the dig, and there's nothing there?
Well, then we just put it all back, and there would be no harm done.
Right, okay, but if you
There's
have...
absolutely no downside to this.
Yeah, I know, but the downside is...
It's all upside. There is no downside.
Yeah, but if your belief system is to believe that you were told that it was there, and it's not there, would that not make you think about what you're being told?
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, no,
I've challenged them to prove me wrong.
Okay, well, that's fair enough.
Years ago, and they won't. They absolutely won't play ball.
Right, okay. Well, maybe we can get a support group together, or maybe something can be done to at least prove it either way, whether it's there.
Well, I got, when I first came here, Sheila de Valera was the Minister for Heritage, I got a petition of 500 local people's signatures. I got a petition of 500 people in Jib's signatures, which I gave to the local TD, Johnny Brady, and he said that he told me that he gave them to Sheila de Valera, and I never heard anything back from them. And there have been people all over the world for the last number of years since then who have been sending in requests to the subsequent ministers of heritage, including Jimmy Dinihan, who was the latest one before this new one, and they just get a standard form letter saying we are not considering doing any work on the Hill of Tara, blah blah blah. It's just a standard form letter, and we're not asking them to do anything. We're asking them to let me do it. Okay, so what would be, we put this out to our listeners, if they said, how many people would we need? 500 people to turn up or to go to somebody? Would that be enough, 500 plus people to get together one day and go up to somebody and go, we all demand that you let us dig up in the Hill of Tara to find the Ark of the Covenant? I'm just wondering if our listeners would turn up on that day as support if that was the case, to see if it's there. That would be interesting if they would do that. Now, what really needs to happen is that the Irish people in general need to understand that they've been ripped off and enslaved by all this false legislation that is prohibited in God's law that they swore to maintain and keep in perpetuity forever. So that they need to return to that law and tear up all the legislation and go back to the law, at which point there will be nothing to stop us from recovering the Ark. You see, the Ark was in the temple in Jerusalem. Everybody knew it was there, okay? Yeah. But they didn't keep the law, even though they knew it was there. Well, look, they're obviously not going to keep the law because it's not in their interest to keep the law, because selfishness, greed, and everything else. Well, there's enough... in the interest of the Irish people. Well, I tell you, there's enough... The Irish people have always been kept poor because they haven't kept the law. Yeah. Well, no, I think we need to dig it up, and to be honest with you, there's enough digger drivers around Ireland at the moment who'd probably do an Ixer. They're in white vans with blue logos on the side. You might be able to talk to them. But no, see, on a serious note, I think if the people of Ireland, if we can get it out there and get enough support to say, right, it's either there or it's not. We want people's support to come on the day or do what needs to be done to actually find out whether it's there. I think that would be good to at least prove it, one or the other. And if it is there,
I mean, what happens if what happens if we do the dig and you find it and it's there? What's next?
Well, we have to go back to keeping the law. It will prove to everybody who's a skeptic, it will prove that the Bible is true, won't it?
True. That's the point. Yeah, it would be. Okay, we have a few.
That will prove the ruler of the universe also exists.
Yeah, totally.
And when people, but you see, everybody's got or most people in their house have got a Bible. And in the Bible, it's got copies of the law, Moses' law, that's in the Ark of the Covenant, right? So they can read the law themselves. And if they do that, they will see that it is fair for everybody. Well, and that it is the only way that we will have peace and prosperity.
Well, I like the idea of the Ark where every 7 years you get a debt reset. That's
right, yeah. It's called the year of release. Yeah. Every 7 years, all debts are forgiven.
Now, listen to that, listeners.
Then every 50 years is the year of Jubilee. And in the year of Jubilee, not only are all debts forgiven, but all of the wealth and the land is redistributed back to the people that it was taken from during those 50 years.
Okay, now the listeners are getting interested, because that means that all your debts and mortgages and everything else will be wiped off. So maybe there's an interest.
It means you get to keep your property. You don't have to pay the mortgage. It's then your property. Your car is your car. Your credit card debt is written off. Whatever you bought with it is yours. Now, I don't want people to start abusing that, all right? Because that's wrong. But the legitimate debts that they've got are forgiven.
Okay, well, I have
don't go out and borrow £1 million the day before the release is going to happen. You know, because that's just not fair.
No, there's a great comment here from Chris, one of our long-time listeners. And he said, tell the van driver that there's a water meter to be fitted at the Hill of Tara. You get a few water meters fitted. Okay, Jar, we're going to go over.
Can I just bring in here because we're talking about the Jubilee, right?
Yeah.
I made a film called The Nazi Banksters Crimes Ripple Effect. And at the end of the film, I called on the people of the UK, and Ireland as well, if they wanted to come, and some people did come. All right, but I called on the people of the UK to turn up at Parliament on the 5th of November of 2012. Okay, and to come like millions of them.
Yeah.
So that we could clean house, we get rid of all of the politicians, get rid of all of their legislation, declare the Jubilee, redistribute all the wealth, forgive all their debts, redistribute all the wealth that Elizabeth and all her cronies have stolen, and their forebears have stolen from the British people and the Irish people when Ireland was part of the of the British Empire, and redistribute the land so that everybody has enough land so that they can raise their own crops, raise their own livestock, and more importantly their own children, without having to be a debt slave and be on the treadmill 9 till 5 every day to earn a pittance.
Well,
and I turned up, okay, on the 5th of November, and the people didn't turn. There were some of the anonymous people turned up, but there was nowhere near enough people to be able to do that. And if people won't turn up for that, to have all their debts cancelled, to have a share in the wealth, and if you shared out Elizabeth and all her cronies' wealth, everybody in Britain would be a millionaire, and to share out the land so that they could have a piece of land, and they could build their own house, and they could raise it, they could be free from the system.
Yeah. Okay, well listen.
They didn't turn up.
No, I totally agree. I know you said that to me, that they didn't turn up. Well, let's just kind of wipe the slate clean. That happened. It wasn't. Maybe it just wasn't the right time. I don't know.
Well, maybe this year.
Maybe this year might be different. But if you do seriously want to gather people there for support, and they know that at the end of it that there's debt forgiveness, because if the Ark of the Covenant is there, and that's one of the rules, then obviously a lot of people in debt with their houses. It mightn't be too bad to jump in a car and take a drive to the Hill of Tara for one night, if the day is nice or the weather's nice, and come down and support, the dig, if it's going to take place, or the protest. and say, right, we want this dug up, because if one of the laws is that all debt is forgiven, I for one will be driving down there anyway, that's for sure. But listen, John, JAH, we have to watch the time, so there's other subjects we need to talk about. I have questions here that have come in, so I'm going to pass off to Steve, and Steve's going to go through them with you.
Okay. JAH, first question that springs to my mind is, when they were putting down the M3 motorway, people protested against the dig, but they still went ahead and done it. Are you sure that the Ark is still in a safe place where it's supposed to be, or would it be possible that it was dug up while they were doing the dig and maybe hidden somewhere, or brought out of the country or whatever?
Yeah, no, the motorway is in the valley, and the Ark is buried underneath the mound of the hostages. So the road and the digging for the road was miles away from where the Ark is buried.
Oh, okay.
And they couldn't dig it up, because if they tried to dig it up, they'd die. I'm the only person that can touch it.
Okay, fair point. So it's still there,
and the reason why I haven't told anybody exactly how to get to it, because I don't want them to get killed.
Right.
Right, but anyway, to just go back quickly to, I told you that it was taken from Jerusalem to Tanis in Egypt with Jeremiah and Tepi, the king's daughter. Well, that's why Raiders of the Lost Ark, the film, that the famous Indiana Jones and all of that, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, that's why it starts in Tanis in Egypt. But if you read the book of Jeremiah, it told you quite clearly that he was warned that he had to leave, because Nebuchadnezzar was going to come and attack the Pharaoh.
Okay. Well, let's go through the questions, JAH, because we have to watch the time, because we get carried away sometimes, and then we look at the time and we end up not being able to talk about what we want to talk about as well, the second subject. So, Steve, go ahead.
Okay, Doogie has a question, and he said, didn't Christ say that the Mosaic law was null and void when he
No, absolutely not.
When he rebuked the scribes and Pharisees?
No, absolutely not. If you read Matthew chapter 5, verse 17, it says quite clearly that think not that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy them, but to fully preach them. And that not one iota, not one dot, not one tittle will be removed from the law until all, including all the prophecies, including the prophecies that are yet to be fulfilled, have been fulfilled.
Okay.
The church have lied to everybody, and these false priests have lied and deceived everybody into believing what Doogie has said.
Okay, and a second question from Doogie as well. He's wondering, can you explain Matthew 24:5?
24:5.
I can't give you any more to go on. I'm not familiar with the writings of Matthew.
Just a minute. Does he want to quote it?
No, I think he's wondering, can you explain?
24:5.
Yeah. Or maybe Dougie, if you could just type it in real quick, then maybe that might help us.
Yeah, go to the next question, and then we'll come back to that one.
Here's an easy one from Chris. Chris is wondering, does JAH believe in hell?
Yeah, we're in it.
Yeah, I think that question came up when you were on the last time as well,
yeah.
And I do believe you said the very same thing to us. And actually, one of the first questions that came in was from Jerry. Jerry, and this kind of has a familiar ring to it as well, but Jerry was wondering, is time speeding up seriously?
Sorry, I was just searching for Matthew 24:5.
Yeah, just in relation to time.
Can you just repeat the question?
Jerry was wondering, is time speeding up?
Whether it's physically speeding up is difficult to say. I mean, you will know, just as I know, that once you turn 21, every year seems to get faster and shorter. But whether that's a reality or that's just our perception of it remains to be seen.
I think I was watching some science on this, or a program, YouTube video, and they were talking about it, and they were saying it's not so much time speeding up, it's consciousness that's speeding up.
Yeah.
That's what they said, that's what's speeding up, not so much time, because time is just something that's man-made. We define time. So man has defined time, but it's consciousness that's speeding up as opposed to time. Okay,
yeah,
next.
Only with some people. Most people are fast asleep.
Yeah, well, that's true. Steve, next question.
They're only semi-conscious.
Okay. Just while you're still checking out that Matthew 24:5.
Yeah, I found it.
You have it? Okay.
I have found it, yeah.
Do you need a second to go through it?
Well, it says, "For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And many have come, saying that Jesus is Christ, and have deceived millions and millions of people." The Vatican's been doing it, since around about the 1st century AD. And the Church of England's been doing it since the time of Henry VIII. And they all say, that Jesus is Christ, and they're deceiving millions and millions of people. So that's perfectly true.
And of course, when myself and JAH met up and we had a coffee, I was telling him about Phil Collins has a song, Jesus, He Knows Me. You know that song? And the story is that Phil Collins was over in America, and every time he switched on the TV, all he could see was these televangelists saying that they're God and everything else,
Well, and multimillionaires.
Multimillionaires with the girlfriend and the drug habit and everything else, but they were kind of doing double standards, and that's why he wrote the song, because based on what he was seeing on the TV over there. So, so many kind of
there's Pat Robertson, and all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're multi-millionaires.
Yeah, exactly. They have the they have this kind of what's the word really? I remember I talked to you about it.
Hypocrisy.
We call it that. Yeah, this God figure.
Well, you've got. I mean, if you look at Elizabeth, right? She's the head of the Church of England. She is the richest woman on earth, okay, and claims to be the head of the Church of England, a Christian religion, and it says in the scriptures that a camel will go through the eye of a needle before a rich person will enter the kingdom of heaven. Okay, and she's the richest woman on the planet. And she claims to be the head of a religion that says that a camel will go through the eye of a needle before a rich person will enter the kingdom of heaven.
But she's a hypocrite, you know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
But I'm just taking what you're saying about these televangelists.
Yeah.
To its ultimate.
Yeah, and you want to take the head off the snake, don't you? That's something that you want to do.
Redistribute all that stolen wealth back to the people.
So even though we talk about common law and about our legal name fictions and all that, your approach is to, well, let's just cut the head off the snake. Let's go to the top of the ladder and take the queen out. And if you take the queen out, you take everything else out. Exactly
that, yeah. You see, the thing is, at her fraudulent coronation in 1953, 2nd of June 1953, she swore the coronation oath, as did all of her forebears. In that coronation oath, she swore to maintain the laws of God to the utmost of her power. All right? The laws of God, not common law, not statute law, not legislation. She swore to maintain the laws of God to the utmost of her power. Now, that law that she swore to maintain to the utmost of her power, as I've already explained, prohibits mankind, from legislating at all. Okay? And yet she has given royal assent to, well, when I was taken to court, but at that time, in May of 2011, she had given royal assent to 3,401 pieces of legislation, which means she'd broken her coronation oath at that time 3,401 times, which means that the first time that she gave royal assent to a piece of legislation, she broke a coronation oath, and thus she was no longer the monarch with immediate effect. But she's been sitting there, nobody's held her feet to the fire, nobody's held her accountable, nobody has said, look, you swore this oath. Oh, well, I've said it, but nobody else seems to be doing. You swore this oath that you would help us to stay free and to not be oppressed and to live and all help each other and all have a fair share of the nation's wealth. And you haven't done that. You've stolen. You're a trillionaire. You have stolen all of our wealth and made us all poor.
And apparently, there's been a lot of finger pointing regarding, Jimmy Savile and paedophilia, and the royals have been mentioned in whispers,
Yeah, and also the fact that they murdered Diana.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Well,
Well.
because she wanted to help the people. She didn't want to be like them. She wanted to be the Queen of Hearts.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
the kind of people they are. Okay, let's go back over to the questions. Steve, over to you.
Yeah, Jerry's wondering, how did you come about the information that kind of means that you're the only one who could touch the Ark and wouldn't get killed? How do you know this to be true?
Well, does anybody else know where it is?
That's a good point.
Well, there are people out there who think they know where it is.
Yeah, but they're wrong.
Right, okay. Would they not say that about you?
Well, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Because obviously, that's the thing with opinions. Everybody has an opinion.
What you have to understand is that Satan is going to obfuscate and try and prevent anybody from recovering it, because he's the one behind all the legislation, behind all the Luciferian people and the Freemasonry and the monarchy, and all the rest of it. So it's like I explained to you about the Bible, and the Bible's got nothing to do with churches and priests and religions. It's the law book, and it's prophecy. 2/3 of it are prophecy.
Exactly.
99.9% of it has already been fulfilled, and we're in the phase of fulfilling the last 0.1%.
And we're near there now with everything going on. Okay.
Exactly, but let me just explain.
Okay.
All right. That if you want to hide a book, what would you do?
Put it in front of people.
No, well, that as well, yeah, but you'd fill the world with books.
Oh, yeah, well...
Fucking their grandmother's written a stupid, their life story, or, novels about, fantasies about this, that, and the other. If you want to hide a tree, you put it in the middle of a forest. You can't find the wood for the trees. And that's exactly what Satan's done with the Bible. And he's also got all of the religions and everybody to turn everybody away from the Bible. Instead of turning away from the religions, but keeping the Bible, looking at it, reading the law and the prophecies, and seeing how fair the law is, and that it prevents these people from legislating, so that they can't rip you off. Instead of doing that, they've thrown out the baby with the bathwater. They've thrown the law book away because they believe it belongs to these false religions, and it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, we could go down that road, but we don't have time to do that. But what I think the practical...
That's why it needs recovering from Torah.
Yeah. Well, this is what I'm saying. I think the practical approach would be, if you believe it's there, then we get enough people together to support the dig to let's find out if it is. And then if it is there, then we will kind of eat humble pie. And if it's not there, you'll be eating humble pie. I think that's the best way to do it. All right, we'll go over to a few more questions, and then we'll talk about the Middle East, the Ukraine, because that's all heating up at the moment. And that 1% that you talked about is going to be very important, because I think we're pretty close to that now.
0.1%.
Sorry?
0.1%.
0.1%. Okay, Steve, let's go through them couple of questions you have left.
Yeah, we've still got a fair few to get through. Mick is wondering, does JAH believe that we are all one consciousness, or what does he believe? If he believes we are, then who is his God?
All one consciousness. We're all individuals. I'm not sure what he means by one consciousness.
Okay, Mick, if you want to type in that. Well, we are part of all energy, and we're all part of the universal energy. But we're physically, like I always say anyway, that we are spiritual beings experiencing life through physical form.
Yeah, exactly that. But I've explained all that in the way Homo faced the fire.
Yeah, as you say, human plus being is the human is the animal side, and the being is the spiritual side.
Yeah.
And that's the mixture of who we are, both of us. Okay, next question, Steve.
Okay, next question, another one from Jerry. What's the direct link, historical connection between the lands of Ireland and Egypt? Was there regular travel between them?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay, next one.
Okay, next one. This is from Ray.
Well,
Ray.
If you read the ancient Irish historical writings, it talks about Teotefi, who came from Egypt, okay? In the mound of the hostages, when they excavated it they excavated the mound, not beneath it, in 1952. And the excavation was done by Sean P. O'Riordan, right? they found in the entrance, which if the people are familiar with the Mount of the Hostages, you've got the mound, and then you've got what appears to be an entrance. It's got an iron gate with a padlock on it, and inside it there's some stones on each side, and there's a stone wall at the end of a short passage. All right, in that passage they found the skeleton of a teenager, a male teenager, who was wearing a necklace made of faience beads. And they established that necklace came from Egypt.
Okay. Well, again, if they Google Mound of the Hostages and have a look at the pictures, they'll actually see that. Right, okay, again, we just go through the questions there.
Yeah, there's a question there come in from Chris, and Chris is one, what is etymology? I don't know, maybe, could you explain that simply? Or would Chris be better off just sticking it into a search engine and getting the information that way?
Etymology. Is he talking about the origin of words?
I'm not sure.
Don't know. He just wants to know what. Chris, I think you're probably better off googling that one. To be honest with you, just to save time. Next question, Steve. Okay,
a comment from Joseph, and Joseph says Colossians 2:14, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. I don't even understand that, JAH. I don't know. Does that make any sense to you?
If you go back to the book of Matthew, okay?
Yeah.
Jesus condemned the scribes and Pharisees for legislating. Okay? And he came to reinstate the Torah, the law, just as Jeremiah had said to Zedekiah hundreds of years previously, okay, that they were to go back to keeping the law. Jesus said the same thing, because the message has always been the same as I'm giving you now, is that you have to return to the law of God. And the scribes and Pharisees had started with the Talmud. I'm pretty sure that you will be familiar with the word. I don't know whether all of your listeners will be familiar with the word Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud. Which is all of the legislation of the Jews, the counterfeit Jews. And they've been adding to it ever since the time of Jesus, and they're still adding to it. And it was that Jesus came to condemn, and if you read Matthew chapter 23, you'll see that's what he came, and that's why they nailed him on the cross, because he came to make people go back to the law, and for the rich people to redistribute all the wealth that they've fraudulently stolen under their legislation. It's always the same story. And the last page of the Old Testament is Malachi chapter 4, and it says that the people must return to the law that was given to Moses, or he is going to come and smite the earth with a curse, and it will be a day that will burn like an oven, and it will burn up everybody who refuses to return to the law. Okay. So it's not just about, it's for your benefit to do it, like I'm explaining to you in logical terms. Yeah. It's actually a commandment that you will do that, or you're all going to be burned to ashes.
Right, okay.
That's the last page of the Old Testament.
Well, let's look at what's happening, because obviously this might tie in with the Middle East, with their 0.1%. There's an awful lot going on. We hear about World War III. We hear about, you talk about the 12 tribes of Israel, and obviously we're all going to be affected by this. We have the Ukraine going off. We have the plane being apparently shot down. That's what they're saying. There's things going. There's so much going on in the world, and I mean, it's you have BRICS countries setting up different a development bank with 100 billion. You have the IMF, you have obviously Christine Lagarde, we're at number 7. You have the bank stress test coming up in September. People saying they won't pass that because they won't have enough funding. You know, there's people being hurt, killed, maimed, everything. I mean, globally, where are we at the moment with the way things are? You know, according to your what you have researched and what have you found? I mean, are we near that time? You know, like I have said before on the show that we are in Sodom and Gomorrah, as we said earlier. Yeah. You know, is there such thing as hell? Well, yeah, we're in it, because all you have to do is look around and see if anybody's happy, and nobody's happy. They're all kind of in debt, trying to pay the bills. In some countries, you're getting killed for, you know, kicking a ball around on the beach, and 4 kids got killed.
Yeah, 10-year-old boys, you know, it's really sick, isn't it?
That's bad. So where do you think we are at the moment?
Well, I talked about the 3 last woes, which were the 3 angels, the 5th and 6th and 7th angels with the trumpets in the book of Revelation. And we appear to be in the 6th time period, which is the second of the 3 last woes. As I explained, it talks about the 4 angels of the great river Euphrates that are set loose to gather all the nations of the earth to the battle of Armageddon. And the 4 angels, for people who weren't listening last time, are the 4 countries that the great river Euphrates runs through. It starts in Turkey, southeastern Turkey, in the mountains there, and then it runs through Turkey into Syria, and then it runs through Syria and it runs into Iraq, and then it runs through Iraq and it becomes the Shatt al-Arab waterway, which is the border between Iraq and Iran. So you have Turkey, Syria, Iraq and Iran, and they are the 4 angels that are bound in the great river Euphrates that it refers to. And it says that eventually that the waters of the Euphrates, which I also explained, does not mean the H2O. It does not mean the liquid water. It means the people. Because in the same book of Revelation, it tells you that the waters are peoples, nations, multitudes and tongues. Okay, so it's people. So the power of the people will be dried up, that the ways of the kings of the east will be prepared. And the kings of the east are Russia, China. In fact, in the Old Testament, in Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39, it lists some of the people that are going to be there present at the Battle of Armageddon, and it talks about Gog and Magog, Meshech and Tubal. It talks about Persia, which of course is Iran. It talks about Libya, and we know what happened to Gaddafi and what's happening there at the moment, and Ethiopia. And in the maps of those days, in ancient times, Libya, Egypt and Ethiopia were the whole of Africa on a map as it was displayed. Of course, since then they've been broken up into smaller parts, you know, and you've got South Africa, Rhodesia, and all the rest, and Morocco and Algeria and all of that. But it tells you that they will come against the 12 tribes of Israel. And what's happening at the moment, and has been happening for a number of years now, is that the world is being divided into 2 camps. And the 2 camps are going to be, when it's finally separated, are going to be the 12 tribes of Israel in their modern day form, and the rest of the world, the entire rest of the world. And the entire rest of the world is going to come against the 12 tribes of Israel, and they're going to defeat them, and those of them that are not killed are going to become literally slaves to the rest of the world, who we're going to have a good time getting paying back the tribes of Israel, America, Britain, and the rest of the 12 tribes of Israel are going to get punished for what they've done to the rest of the world, because they've been around the world poking everybody in the eye and upsetting everybody, ripping everybody off, blowing people up, doing all kinds of stuff. So they're going to get payback. And this is going to happen, and the ruler of the universe is going to not only allow this, but he's going to make it happen, because they have never kept the covenant that they made at Sinai, which was to keep the law and to teach it to the rest of the world, so that the whole world would be living under that wonderful, perfect system of governance, where everybody would be like one big family, everybody helping each other, nobody being deprived, nobody being poor, nobody being filthy rich, ripping everybody off. And because they haven't done that, we've had nothing but wars for the last few thousand years, because the 12 tribes of Israel did not keep the covenant. So that's what's going to happen, and you're seeing signs of that now. Yeah. Earlier on, you mentioned about Germany turning east, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Germany, I've been reading as well, and they're saying that Germany is talking about leaving NATO and joining with Russia and China. Okay, so they're separating off from the tribes of Israel, and they're going to join the rest of the world. Now, you said that that they might be doing that because I'm trying to think
just everything that's been going on with Angela Merkel's NSA phone being tapped and all the issues they had.
About the NSA, but you didn't mention, which is equally as important, the fact that they asked for America to give them all their gold back.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
America has refused to give them their gold back, presumably because they don't have it.
Yeah,
they've used it all up.
Yeah.
In order to they forced down the price of gold in order to protect the dollar. And whilst they forced the price of gold down, that has enabled China, who had trillions of US dollars, and Russia and India to buy the gold cheap. So they've had to sell them the gold at this low price, and so they ended up where they haven't got the gold to give back to Germany because they've sold it. And Germany also asked France for some of their gold back because they had some of it in America and they had some of it in France. And the French didn't have the gold to give the Germans either, so they went into Mali. Okay? And Mali, it has gold. And the French have got in there so that they can get the gold to give it to Germany. And the same with Libya. They went in and they stole Gaddafi's gold. They stole, well, it wasn't his personally, it was the Libyan people's, and he always knew that. But they went into Libya to steal the gold. And the first thing they did when they put this puppet regime in Ukraine was they shipped out all the gold to America.
Yeah.
All right? So the NSA spying, the gold situation, Germany, they are saying, people who claim to be on the inside, are saying that Germany is thinking of leaving NATO and joining Russia and China. And they're also saying that France will follow on, because wherever Germany goes, France will tag along.
Yeah. And we've heard that as well. I mean, it's just, I just can't believe the audacity of Obama, who blatantly stands up there and he goes on giving out about Putin's troops or what Putin is doing, and they've gone into all these countries in the Middle East, destroyed them,
absolutely,
devastated them, and he has the audacity to stand up there as if he's like, holier than thou, saying that Putin is wrong.
Yeah, and if there was a gold medal for lying, he'd win it hands down every time.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, what's the time scale on this? Do you think it's quite imminent now what's going on? Are we talking about the next year? I mean, again, if you look at this, the fourth of the blood red moon is on September 2015. You have this talk with 500 days to avoid climate chaos by the French Foreign Minister and John Kerry.
Yeah.
They obviously know something's happening or something's gonna happen, because we know all the troop movements are going on. We know that in the Ozarks they have underground bases there they've built, and there's loads of them around the place. Even though
Denver, in Norway, they built them everywhere.
Yeah, and we have they were also talking about the seed bank in Norway, that they have more seeds that were shipped there in the last few weeks to the seed bank in the island in Norway, and that's a natural freezer for the seeds there. And also even in Ireland, we mentioned it last week about the continuity of government testing between the Dáil and Dublin Castle, because Dublin Castle, I
didn't know about that. That's news to me.
Yeah, we mentioned that, we talked about it last week, but it was in either last year or I think it was last year's paper. It was mentioned. It was just one of these small articles in the Independent saying, they're doing continuity of government testing between the Dáil and Dublin Castle, because Dublin Castle is well fortified. And if all riots break out and things happen, they'll all run to Dublin Castle and.
Yeah. Well, where will Michael Collins be when you need him?
Well, there you go. Look, at the moment he's probably rolling in his grave at the moment, you know.
I think he's absolutely doing that.
Exactly. So I think within the next few months, you know, I mean, people are talking about 2014, but with everything that's going on, I mean, we just have to, you know, you have to take every day as it comes. That's the way it is.
Yeah, and it's accelerating.
Yeah, no, totally. I think, I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, as I said at the start of the show, myself and Steve could really do a full show just purely talking about the things that are going on around the world. Yeah. And in the 4 years that we've been doing OYM, the world has changed in that time. Just in the 4 years, it's just been phenomenal. Yeah,
well, yeah, it's changed dramatically since we've been in contact, you know, and that's what, 3 years?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's just amazing. Well,
talking about that Ukraine flight, the Malaysian flight that went down, and all the number 7s and all of that.
Yeah.
Igor Strelkov, who is a Russian commander, he was in the Russian army, but he is a Ukrainian from the east of Ukraine. He's one of the leaders of the separatists, or so-called separatists, and he said that he has been given information from one of his sub-commanders who was on the site of the crash, saying that a lot of the bodies, they're not, which you briefly mentioned, are not freshly dead. They're putrefying. They've been dead for days, if not weeks.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have to then consider there was other reports at the time that MH370 went missing, which is weeks ago now. There was mention that the Russians said that they thought that it had landed on the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan at Kandahar. Other people were saying that it had been hijacked with the Global Hawk, where they take over the controls from the ground, and they then fly the plane with Global Hawk, and the pilots and the people inside have no control over the plane. And that it was taken to Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, which is a big American base there, and that it was landed there, and that they may be going to keep it for future use as a false flag.
That's right.
And also other people at that same time, which you may or may not be familiar with, were saying that there was a Malaysian Airlines clone of the 370 that was at Tel Aviv airport. Now, it may have been 370 rather than a clone.
Exactly. Well, the MH17, the flight that happened during the week, the other thing that was said, again, this is all speculation, I don't know, it's just, you get a third party, so you don't know. But
it never took off, it was cancelled, is what I've read recently.
Well, I also read that it was cancelled, but there was a statement made, this guy who was a air traffic controller.
A Spanish guy was an air traffic controller in Kiev, in the control tower there.
That's right, yeah.
And he wrote on his Twitter, or was it Facebook? One of
Twitter, Twitter, yeah.
Okay, and he wrote it in Spanish to cover his backside because he was hoping that the people in Ukraine wouldn't know what he was writing.
Yeah.
He wrote it all in Spanish. But he said that the Ukraine shot it down, that it was being accompanied by 2 Ukrainian fighter jets up to 3 minutes before it hit the ground. And he was saying that they shot it down.
Yeah.
Right? So now if we add into that the bodies had been dead for a long time and were putrefying, was it Flight 370 that they'd hijacked, and was that then flown and shot down in Ukraine as a false flag, which a lot of people were saying was probably going to happen.
Because they need more false flags.
Yeah, and they're blaming Putin. The thing is that they always do that. When 9/11 happened, instantly, it was Osama bin Laden. You know? When 7/7 happened in London, which I made the films about, as you know, Tony Blair came on the television and said, we know that this was done in the name of Islam. When nobody knew anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, and people have been...
with this, with Putin, which is an absolute indication that it's definitely a false flag.
Well, when you hear Hillary Clinton and Dick Cheney turning around and saying, oh yeah, you know, I mean, they might as well have come out and said, oh yeah, it's Putin. Because that's the way they were employing, and the news agencies are saying the same thing. I mean, do they really think the people are stupid after 9/11?
That's the problem. Most people are watching reality TV. They're watching Kim Kardashian's backside. They're watching sports. We just had the World Cup and all. They're just fast asleep.
Well, you see, the whole thing about the being fast asleep is all people being in their comfort zone. And as long as they're in their comfort zone, they won't change anything.
But that's going to end, because that's prophesied in the Gospel of Thomas.
Yeah, no, it is going to end, and they will be kicked out of their comfort zone, and that's when they'll hopefully start waking up, if it's not too late. Steve, do you have more questions for Jared?
Well, let me just say, okay. You know, I'm not putting a date on anything. I'm explaining what's happening. I'm explaining what's going to happen. All right. And what I need to emphasize on the people is that, well, the last time I was on, you know, I told the people, and you advertised it, that they need to read the book, The Way Home or Face the Fire. And it is the only survival plan that will work. So as you can see things speeding up and that we're heading in that direction, it's imperative that everybody reads that, because if you don't read it and apply it to your life, then I'm afraid you're not going to make it.
Well, even if they didn't read the book, but they actually went for, and for whatever reason, if you don't get to it, but we've said before about moving away from ego and ignorance and moving to humility and wisdom, and it's going into a world of service to others. I mean, they're the fundamentals. So if you're not going in that direction, well then, you know.
Yeah, but they won't survive if they don't read the book, study the book, read it over and over, because it's not a read-only-once book. And if they don't do that and apply it to their lives, they won't make it. I can't, you know, say it any clearer than that.
Yeah. Well,
and things are speeding up and speeding up and speeding up, and they're running out of time to do that. You know, they just need to get the book, study it, and apply it to their lives.
Okay, well...
They need to demand... excuse me, they need to demand that the government go back and the people go back to keeping God's law, getting rid of all the legislation, keep God's law, redistribute the land and the wealth, which is what I wanted to do in the UK and in Ireland. Okay, I mean, the people can go to the Dáil, just like I asked people to go to Parliament in the UK, in London. They can do the same thing in Ireland and demand that the politicians repeal all of their legislation, go back to keeping God's law, redistribute the wealth and the land, and set everybody free from all of the suppression. And that will prevent people from, I know you are trying to help people, and that's wonderful that you're doing it, to help them to deal with their problems and not commit suicide, which a lot of people unfortunately are doing.
Yeah.
We need to stop them doing that. There's no need for them to do that. What we need to do is get rid of all the legislation, forgive all the debts, sort everything out so that everybody can have a nice life.
Well, I think we need to find the Ark of the Covenant, and that would be a good starter for 10. Steve, you've got questions?
Just a sec. Okay. I've got... Hello?
Right, okay, that's...
Somebody just rang my phone.
Okay, oh. Sorry,
Sorry, we just muted your mic there, JAH, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, was it you?
No,
we didn't ring your phone.
Oh.
No, we have you on Skype.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know if you did something, but that would make my phone ring, because there was nobody on the other end.
No,
because it's a splitter. It's like the computer and the phone are on the same phone line.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing, JAH. I amaze myself on my technical ability. You know, I'm only messing. Okay, Steve, question time.
Yeah, I know we're watching the time. There's a lot of questions to get through. JAH, I actually dropped some of the questions that we have lined up into the chat there on the Skype, just so you can see them. There are a few to get through, and I'm just going to pick one at random here, which Doogie asked earlier, and He said a simple question. He's just wondering, does JAH claim to be Jesus?
I don't claim to be anything. I state quite clearly in the book who I am. Okay, that we're talking about the human and the being. The being is Christ. The human body from last time was called Jesus, which actually means, the word means Saviour. Alright?
Yeah.
My phone's ringing again.
That's very strange.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
No, obviously it's. I don't know what's going on. Maybe you just need to put your phone up. Put it off hook, JAH.
Yeah, I will do.
Yeah. Okay, we have about.
Let me just finish this for him. Alright?
Yeah.
I have said quite clearly, I'm not making any claims, because when you say that, does he claim to be, it infers that the person is not. And I have stated quite clearly who I am in the book, and the people need to read it. And I am the second coming of Christ. And I can't make it any clearer than that. So I'm telling you, if you don't read the book and you don't apply it to your life, you will not survive.
Okay. Can't get straighter than that.
And that book is, I think you said before, that's free.
thewayhomeorfacethefire.net. You can download the PDF free at thewayhomeorfacethefire.net.
Yeah. And according to Doogie again, he says, how come Jesus comes back with power and great glory in the clouds in the book of Mark 13:26?
Yeah, well, that's yet to happen. That's talking about Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives. And that is yet future. I told you that there is 0.1% still to be fulfilled, and that's part of it. It also says that I would come as a thief in the night, okay? And if they go to jartruth.net/EMMAU2, they will see all the prophecies about the second coming, and that it says that that the body that will be used will come this time not from Judah, so it won't be the body from 2,000 years ago. It will come from Joseph, from Ephraim, who was given the birthright by Jacob Israel. And it's all explained there. I can go through it, or they can look it up at jartruth.net, EMMAU2, the number 2.htm. Okay? It tells you the date that this body would be born, it tells you the country, and it tells you the city where this body would be born. Now, if I'm not who I say, how did I manage to arrange all of that?
I don't know.
Don't know? Well, again, read the book.
Exactly.
And
it's not possible.
And the book is free.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, Howie says, can you please ask JAH if he is familiar with the works, or familiar with Sheikh Imran Nazir Hossein?
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay, see me, he's a scholar of some description.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people who claim to be.
Yeah, they do. And Jimmy is wondering, what's your thoughts on the desecration recently on the phallus on the hill of Tara? They wanted me to say the penis on the hill, but I said I wouldn't say that.
Well, you just did.
I did, didn't I?
Well, I wrote a booklet explaining about it being the curse of Ireland a number of years ago, about 12, 14 years ago. So, you know, my opinion's in that booklet.
Okay.
Okay, what's next? Jerry's wondering, what does JAH expect will or should replace the establishment?
The law.
Yeah, I think
That's
you mean
God's
from administration. Who will administer the law?
Me.
Right, but I mean that's a lot of work. They obviously mean, you know, you're going to have administration.
Well, I have people, I have disciples who will help me.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Steve.
This one is from Ray. I don't claim to understand it at all, but I'm going to read it out as it is. It's from Ray. He says, does JAH realise it's Hebrew and Aramaic mainly, as soon as it was transliterated and one is that translated, I don't know, into another language, the mathematical precepts in those older languages are missing. It's morphology and shape of the letters, not just translating it into English, which is another bastardized Neo-Roman script. I think that was in relation to, obviously, something you were speaking of earlier.
No comment.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't really see what he's getting at.
Yeah, let's. I mean, is there any questions there
I'm
that
sure you
would be
don't.
answerable? I don't know.
No, I don't know. This one has just come in. I haven't even had a chance to read through it and go through it, so I'm just going to read it out as is. It's from Dougie. Again, yeah.
Have you only got the same people asking questions over and over? Why don't you give somebody else a chance?
Well, no, they're the only people asking the questions, Jared. That's the issue.
No, there's a lot of people on the chat there, but it's the same people who are asking the questions. Some people are just happy enough to listen to the proceedings.
Okay, well, let's leave it that for now, because we have 5 minutes left, and what we want to do is we want to sum up basically what your approach is to the things that we talked about. People will have their own opinion, and people form their own opinion based on their belief system. So some people will take on board what you're saying, JAH, and they'll say, listen, we agree with what you're saying, and they like the idea of the Ark of the Covenant and everything else. And then there's other people who will have their opinion based again on their belief system, and they just won't get it. And of course, when people like that don't get it, what they do is they mock it, really. So, and that's just the path of knowledge they're on. Maybe in 2 or 3 years' time, they'll come across the information that you've talked about, and then they'll go back and go, yeah, maybe 2 or 3 years ago I disagreed with that, but now I agree with it. And that's the way it works with some people. 2 or 3 years. Yeah, well, if we're still here. But, I mean, the whole idea of the Ark of the Covenant, I mean, maybe it's a good idea. Maybe that's something that, that's something to work towards, because if it is there, brilliant. If it's not there, well, as again, it's humble pie either side, but it'd be proof in the pudding for everybody else, to see it. And I'm sure there's people out there, out of curiosity, would turn up just to see if it was there, if a dig went on. But we need to get the support of the people, and maybe work out a way how to do it. I don't know, but
if we get the support of enough people, we can force the government to allow it to happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, put it this way, if it states in there and we can apply it that every 7 years the debt gets written off, happy days. I mean, we'll all have to agree with that. People with credit cards and mortgages and everything else. I mean, we can't argue with that, Okay, we might end up having to do a part 3 down the line, I think, but we'll just have to, see where we go. But is there any lasting comments that you want to make about the information that we talked about and people's... I mean, you're going to get people who are sceptical about, obviously, what you talk about. As I say, there's some people going to be like that.
Well, I said 2,000 years ago that when I came again, it would be like the times of Noah. Okay? And like the times of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, people like yourself and lots of other people can see that quite plainly it is the times of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the times of Noah when there's violence everywhere. That's happening too. All right, but they've all missed the point. What I was saying was that when I come again, it will be as the times of Noah, because nobody, like in the times of Noah, nobody believed Noah. The only people that believed him were 7 people, his wife, 3 sons, and their wives, okay? There were only 8 people on Noah's Ark, and they're the only people that survived. Everybody else who laughed at him, everybody else who didn't believe him, died. And that's what the statement was making 2,000 years ago when I said it would be like the times of Noah. There will be very, very, very few people who will believe me, and only those people will survive. In the book of Revelation, it says there will be 144,000 survivors. If we say that there's 6,000 or 6,500 million people on the planet, 144,000 is a very, very, very small percentage. In the Old Testament, in the second book of Esdras, he was asking at the end times, he said, how many people will be destroyed. And he said, well, you would be better to ask how many people will survive. And he said, well, how many will survive? And he said, it will be as a drop is to a wave.
Yeah.
Okay? A drop to a wave. So that is then in the book of Revelation, in the New Testament, is shown as 144,000 out of 6,500 million, which is again like a drop is to a wave. Okay? So
well, I think
only the people that believe me and do what I've told them to do will survive. That was the statement 2,000 years ago. It is the statement now. I can't emphasize enough that they need to study the way home or face the fire. They need to then go and pick up the Old Testament and learn and study the law and help to re-establish it, because that's their only hope of surviving.
Okay, well, the book is available on the website for them to download. They can read. You know, the way home or facethefire.net, they can go down there. Okay, what we'll do is we're finishing up now because we have to crack on. We have a few more announcements to make and stuff like that. A big thank you, JAH, for coming on the show and talking to us about your bits and pieces.
Thank you very much for having me and allowing me to advise people.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
Give them.
We'll Steve will get all your details on your websites and all that. Steve.
Yeah, well, I think JAHtruth.net is the website anyway.
That's right, yeah.
JAHtruth.net, and the way home or facethefire.net. That's for the book. Again, that book is, you have it there as a free download. And just while you were just having a chat there with Alan, I actually went to the way home or facethefire.net. You have a testimonial page, and I just want to say there's more than one. There's several testimonial pages, and I know testimonials can be written by anybody. I'm not saying they're
not written by anybody but the people who've written them.
Yeah, well, from what I've seen, just kind of scrolling through them, they're all very positive. A lot of positive people writing in there. And one that struck me, and I just copied it here just to read out. It's from one of the posters, one of the testimonials. It just says that this book is the answer you have been looking for. I mean, you can't get better than that. So I mean, I haven't actually read it myself. I'm not sure if Alan has.
You naughty boy. Slap his legs, Alan.
He's a busy man.
Come here, do you realise how hard it is to read a book and drive a car at the same time?
Hey, JAH, we talked about having this on audio, but that's another story. Okay, listen, we have to wind things up. JAH, stay with us there for a minute, and we're going off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, we're back.
On the show with Vin tonight on PIR is John Bravo. He's going to be a guest on Vin. But we'll just finish off what we're talking about here. We were talking about the Irish politician. What's his name again, Steve?
Simon Coveney.
Coveney. Okay.
Yeah.
So apparently you were saying he didn't say that we paid the 1.2 billion.
Yeah. He allegedly said that water in the water that we drink now is paid for and has been from central taxation. That's obviously the big bucket in the government coffers where all the tax goes. Some people think that road tax goes into a separate department. It doesn't. It all goes into one big bucket and then it's distributed. The wealth is distributed. It's like a crock of gold, if you like. But seemingly what he said was that the central taxation has been paying for the water, but they are trying to find a better way of paying for it. Obviously that's putting in the meters and charging us for the privilege. So I think that's pretty much all he said, but based on his words it was deduced that what he was actually saying when you read between the lines was, we're already paying for it, and by putting in the meters we're going to be paying for it twice. Now if the government was to say, okay, it's already being paid for from central taxation, we're now going to reduce the rate of VAT from 23% down to, I don't know, let's say something like 15%. I'm just picking that as a random figure. You know, then maybe we'd be saving money elsewhere, so maybe we wouldn't be too pushed about paying for the water that we use. But he didn't actually come out directly and say that, but he said words that were kind of, if you look at them carefully, what he was actually saying would kind of...
Well, apparently 40% of the people in Ireland are not going to pay for the water meter, or have not paid, will not pay for the water meter. 40%.
I've got a groundbreaking one for you here now.
Yeah.
I remembered it. Thank God I remembered it. I can't say who it is, but all I can say was, don't post it on Facebook, but someone that I know was speaking to the water meter installers. They put in the meter and they made a little mess outside her garden on her wall. So she collared them as they were wrapping up, and she mentioned the mess on the wall. So they got a power washer and they washed it. They cleaned her wall outside of her garden, and she was quite happy with that. She then just got into a conversation with one of these guys, and this woman lives around the corner, not too far away from me, and she just asked one of these guys, was there many people protesting in the other estate? That's where I live. And your man said, there's one person protesting up there. That's me. But she just got into a quick conversation with him about the water, and he actually said to her, now this is, it was just a conversation between two people, and his job was going around installing water meters. He said he's totally against paying for water, and when it goes in his area where he lives, and he gets a bill, he won't be paying for it. And that's from one of the guys who's going around installing the meters. Right,
okay. Well, he's only seen it as a job. He's getting paid and his mortgage is being paid.
That's it. He's obviously viewing that as food on the table, roof over the head.
Yeah. The other thing is that Irish Independent, which you know is owned by Dennis O'Brien, and should be a boycott really on the Irish Independent, because Dennis O'Brien owns that. And you mentioned during the week that there'll be an article saying there'll be a £5,000 fine if you don't pay for the water. All the scare tactics. So I do think that we need to, again, kind of the United We Strike motto: don't buy, don't comply, ask why. Just boycott anything got to do with Dennis O'Brien and the Irish Independent. I mean, let's hit them where it hurts. Don't go near his products, don't buy them. Simple as. I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah. And never give your name.
Exactly, never give your name, exactly. Now, the other thing that was, there's a major investigation being handed into the press, which will expose a lot of things that are going on. There's a friend of mine who's working on a lot of information. He's speaking to the press at the moment, which will expose a lot of fingers in a lot of pies. Now, that's all I'm about to say about that at the moment, but apparently it's going into the press at the moment, and it's going to expose quite an awful lot if it goes out into the press, if the right paper prints it. Now, also, we talk about the BRICS countries and, Putin, and they've been putting in the new development bank, and sticking two fingers up at Obama and his gang of crooks. So I think it's like, it's all going to go off there. But the other thing as well is that, I don't know whether he came across this, is that the Irish government realised that jailing people is not the answer, right? Because people are now saying, oh, shut the hell with it, I'll go to jail. They go in, they do an overnight, and then they're out the next day and the debt is wiped off. And that costs the government money. So what they're saying is, jail is not working, because there's ordinary people saying, no, I'll go to jail, go on, I've no money anyway, go to jail. So what they're doing now is they're going to be looking at your social, obviously get involved with the inland revenue and your salary, and they're just trying to directly take the money off you. No matter what way you get paid money, they'll try and look at a way to try and get the money off you, rather than sending you to jail because they know it's not working and it's costing them money. So I think we have to go back to the bartering system. Anything that doesn't involve physical cash, I think we're going to have to go back there. We mentioned before in the show about time banking. And I just think that's where we have to go, because the government, they're copping on to the fact that people don't care anymore. And jail, it's more like a holiday camp these days anyway. So apparently some people say. So that's what they want to do. So, I think we have to find a way to get away from the banks and everything else, depending on what's coming down the line, obviously. They're talking about bail-in with the banks as well, because they don't have any money. So we have to be careful of that as well. And that's really it, really. So next week's show, we're hoping to have a pre-record of Enoch Crane, and we're going to be talking about fracking. Fracking in the UK, and that's...
I know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
A Debbie Harry song of Blondie. Fracking in the UK.
Fracking in the UK. I was thinking of Bruce Springsteen. Not born in the UK, cracking in the UK.
Right. I was thinking of blonde,
born in the USA.
French kissing in the USA, cracking in the UK.
UK. Yeah, well, I think there's a potential
There's a
song there.
couple of songs in there.
Couple of songs there. Okay, so we're just about 5 minutes after the hour there, but thanks for everybody staying on and tuning in and catching the end of the show there. As I say, it's down to everybody's opinion what they think about JAH tonight, and each to their own. That's just the way it is, you know. Whether he's right, whether he's wrong, what he thinks he is, what he thinks he isn't. You know, again, it's just opinion, and you know, you just make up your own mind based on the information that you hear. That's all we ever do, anyway. And
we did say that actually. We did kind of speak about that at length when we came back after the break, and when we let JAH go, we were just explaining like that. Look, we don't know whether it's whether he's on the money. We haven't a clue. All we can do is take on board what he says, and you know, you put it in your file, as Jim Maher says, and you know, maybe. I mean, look, there's a lot of things that the chap said that don't resonate with me at all at this moment in time. But that's I wouldn't tell him. I wouldn't just say to him, listen, you're full of BS, because that'd just be rude. I mean, I don't know if what he says it could ring true next week. Geez, I could wake up in the morning and have an epiphany. I don't know. It could be 12 months from now. I could be looking back on, wow, he was right. He was on the money. Glad I read his book. Or I could be saying, yeah, that book was a waste of time. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, you know.
And there has been situations where we've heard information and we kind of put it up on the shelf and said, we leave that for later, we're not ready for that. And then a year down the line we go, oh, okay, now that's relevant because of X, Y, and Z. It's just the way it works, you know. Sometimes we're not ready for information, and, you know, it takes a bit of time, a bit more researching to appreciate it. Or maybe to put it on one side and say, now I have this information, that's irrelevant. So again, it's just down to knowledge and research and everything else. But okay, so that's what's happening next week anyway. We're planning to have a pre-record with Enoch Crane for next week, and fingers crossed that goes. Let us know, keep us posted. Watch out for them emails going out on your Gmail. Don't forget spam folder, junk folder. I don't know why Gmail does that, but it does. And on YouTube, if you're posting any comments, just make them constructive and try and avoid the language, because otherwise they'll only get deleted. You know, there's no need for it. Okay, so take care, everyone. And it's Alan James saying, have a good week. Stay safe. If there's any news, email us. Let us know. And we'll catch you again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, and from myself, Stephen George, as I mentioned earlier on, if anyone, or not anyone, but if Pete is listening, Pete, I did reply to your email that you sent over to us. You were kind enough to take the time to write last week, and I did reply to that email. And it was a nice reply. It was took me a long time to put it together. And I sent it off and it bounced straight back. So, Pete, if you're listening to this either on the live show or the podcast, if you could maybe just send us over a valid email address so I can forward on that reply to you, because we do appreciate people taking the time out. And again, we like to reply, because, you know, if we don't reply, then it makes us seem like we're rude, and we don't want to be rude. Okay, from myself, Stephen George, again, I'll catch you all next week. Take care. Sayonara.